Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode and a new series in the tutorial series of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2024. So today we're going to look at the graphic settings of the new sim and talk to you a little bit about my system spec and then also what my graphic settings are. So obviously if you guys have a similar spec system, it's not the top of the range system as a lot of YouTubers tend to have. It's a fairly mediocre so at the moment I seem to be running fairly comfortable on medium settings. What I'll do is I'll show you around the cockpit. There's not really much glitchy and everything looks fairly detailed. It's took quite a bit of tampering with, to be honest, with a mixture of a few other YouTubers such as ECSM Pilot and Flight Sim Hanger. They've certainly helped in getting the settings to a more substantial level. Let's have a walk on the outside of the cockpit and then you can see how it all looks. Apologies, it's a little bit noisy out here. Walk into the terminal, but let's see, it seems fairly smooth. There's no major glitching. We are also connected to the VATSA network during this time as well, just to give it a bit of an extra stress test. Let's have a walk through the door here. Obviously you wouldn't normally hear the aircraft from here. As you can see, you can pretty much walk anywhere you want. We're in the airport lounge now. This actually all exists in real life, to be fair. This is not standard scenery, this is the Contrail East Midlands Airport. So what we'll do, we'll jump back in the cockpit and then you can hear me a little bit easier. So we'll jump into the settings. My system spec is, so I'm running 64GB DDR5 6000 RAM. I also have a AMD Ryzen 7 800X3D, which is an 8-core processor. Along with that, I also have a RTX 4070, and that seems to run everything pretty good. And we're running on Windows 11, just the Home Edition. So let's jump to the settings. So as you probably note, I'm not running 1080p, I'm running 1440p, not in 4K either. We are using the NVIDIA DLSS Super Resolution, and DLAA is active. I've had a lot of fiddling with the AMD Fidelity FX sharpening, so initially it was around 90. I've managed to boost it to 100 and it's still fairly comfortable. When I got to about 120, it starts to get a bit jumpy. VSync is also active, and the NVIDIA refresh low latency is switched on. The frame rate limit is to the monitor's refresh rate, which makes perfect sense. And we've got a target frame rate of roughly around 60 frames per second. So let's go into the main settings. Obviously it's customized. Generally speaking, I started off on a medium setting and I've upped the level of detail. We've got train pre-caching, which is high. We've got buildings all set to medium. As you can see, rocks, grass, medium. Objects level of detail is currently sat at 50. I might be able to tinker with that a little bit more. But I'm just trying these settings out for the time being. Volumetric clouds, we've got them at medium. We could actually up them to high, to be fair, because we do spend a lot of time with the clouds. It shouldn't affect the performance that much once we're off the ground either. So anisotropic filtering, we're 4 times and we've got 2 times on the texture super sampling. Water waves got to medium. We don't really see much of the water. Depends on what sort of flying you do. If you're doing VFR flying, obviously these things become a little bit more important. We don't have any ray trace shadows. We do have ray tracing actually enabled on the graphics card, but it uses a lot of power, especially when streaming as well. Shadow maps 1024, and terrain shadows at 256. We've got context shadows on medium and windshield effects on high, so this things that look like ice and rain, that should appear well. So all the stuff that you really need to see with airline flying. Moving down, obviously you can see you've got some of the ambient occlusion, cube map reflections. If I'm honest, a lot of these things I don't know 100% what they do. Motion blur, we didn't really feel like we needed any motion blur, so I've just switched that off. The cockpit refresh rate I have moved to high because we need the values in the so like when you change the altitudes, if it's low you can really see it, and it makes things very, very slow. The character I've just left as it was. You notice we've got air traffic quality. Because I use VATSIM a lot, turned it off because I don't need any extra aircraft. We have GSX, and obviously the VATSIM traffic will also come into that. Same with the other air traffic, we've just switched that off for a little bit extra performance. Road traffic and sea and fauna is all on medium, so that is pretty much our settings at a quick glance. Further down we've got all our sound settings. I've fiddled a little bit with the aircraft engine noises and things. Probably bring this up a little bit actually to around 70. The rest were left around the same, to be honest. I've turned off the music pretty much while it's on very low. Online servers, so we've got everything. So we've got photogrammetry on, but we've turned air traffic and career off. We left live weather obviously on because that's what we need to use with the VATSIM network. Multiplayer is all switched off because that's all done externally through VATSIM. Most importantly, rolling cache, because this does a lot of streaming. Cache is really important, so I've got 100 gigabytes on a fast NVMe drive. I think it reads at something like 7,000 megabytes a second or something. It's fairly fast, and obviously the bandwidth we've got unlimited. I've just recently upgraded my internet, so I get 150 megabytes download speed, and it seems to run it fairly comfortably. I've not had any major issues. One thing you will notice when you go through here, when you first load the sim up, you'll notice that the camera is mental, and it absolutely moves really quickly. So what you want to do is you want to come into these cockpit settings and reduce some of these. Like I've got these down to 10, and then want momentum down to like 17. But have a play with them and see what you're comfortable with. It took me a long while to work this out. There's quite a few videos out there if you're not too sure. Flight model, because I've flown flight sim for quite a while, keep it as realistic as possible. We have it on the legacy setting, and then everything's set to realistic with regards to crash realism and everything else. Flight interface, a lot of these things you can turn off. Depends how comfortable you are with flying. If you're fairly comfortable, like you don't really need landmark markers. It makes it more fun being able to look out the window and having a look, trying to work out what's where. But if you want it switch it on, it won't really make a big difference to performance. Obviously, if you feel like you need some extra support with that throughout. Most importantly, turn off the heads-up display in the cockpit view, especially if you're using the Fenix aircraft. You don't need that. It just gets in the way, to be honest. The cockpit interaction system, we've got it on legacy, which then means you don't get any like the tooltips pop up, because you don't really need the tooltips. As you can see, the tooltips are all shown down below. Advanced options, I haven't changed anything, but if you do want to go into developer mode to look at your frames per second, you can turn it on and look at your frames per second from there, and then after that there's nothing really else. Controls, all depends pretty much. So the most important thing I would say to do is, a lot of people are converting back to 2020, though I'm getting quite used to the new commands with 2024. It takes a bit of getting used to with the commands, but there's plenty of videos out there, plenty of documentation out there how to switch it. So basically just click on here and you can literally switch it back to 2020 or 2024. I wasn't quite used to it. The only problem with going back to 2020, when you're going in and out of the cockpit, it can be a bit of a nightmare. And then we've got specific controls, obviously, which are all set up for my Bravo throttle quadrant and the rudder pedals. Although a lot of my settings actually run through Mobifly, I don't actually use many of the settings, just the main control settings pretty much are listed on here, and the radio panel and things like that. But other than that, that's about it. Obviously accessibility, we don't really need to go to that, but if you do need to change anything, you can. You got say you got camera shake, vibrations, it talks about your cursor speed, and also VR. If you want to activate VR, I would suggest checking out VR Sim Pilot for any VR related things. I don't have any VR setups, so I can't really guide you much on that. But that is my setup for the sim at the moment. It could change. I'm not gonna lie, I seem to change some of the graphic settings every week. But at the minute, that seems to be, with the latest updates, seems to be fairly fluid. Don't seem to have many. To be honest, I've had no crashes at all since I've installed the game. I've had a couple of times it's gone a bit slow, but I just like to say it seems fairly stable, as you can see. Pretty stable. Let's just turn the APU off and then you won't have any noise. sounds are really good. All the lovely details are perfect for what you need really. The format is shown in the background there. Like I say, I could probably have looked a little bit more with the clouds and bits and bobs there. I'm obviously using London airports, and generally speaking I normally do use London airports. So we'll just have to wait and see in the store for the new sim. Could be a lot more add-ons come into the market. Also with the Fenix, it's not currently natively supported with the Fenix themselves, though it works pretty much the same as 2020. But I think we'll leave this video here today, guys, and if you like, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and we shall see you in the next one. Take care.